Welcome to Digging Deeper, brought to you by California Unearthed. It has been a while, but we are back doing another podcast episode. I have Cheryl with me once again.
Hello.
And as always, she has no clue what we're talking about. Which
Not at all. You won't tell me.
I absolutely love. So we get her honest reaction to this information. So today, we are going to talk about the Pony Express.
Okay.
We're going to go off on a little bit of a tangent on the Pony Express, though. Now, real quick, I have to say, Cheryl and I are both sick. We both have colds, and so I'm going to try to delete all the coughs and the ums and ahs out of the podcast. But if we sound a little funny, our voices are a little off, that's why. So let's go and dig into this. The Pony Express, for those of you who do not know, was horseback riders that delivered the mail. It was an 1,800-mile trip from St. Joseph, Missouri to Sacramento, California. That trip took them 10 days, but the Pony Express was a very short run. It only ran from April of 1860 until October of 1861.
I thought it went longer than that.
No, But the interesting thing about it is there were two terminus buildings remaining, one in Sacramento and one in St. Joseph, Missouri. Now, the one in St. Joseph, Missouri was demolished in August of 1847. It's just a coincidence that that date lands on the same date as the event that we're going to be talking about here. But the Sacramento terminus still exists today. It's in Old Town Sacramento.
Okay, which would make sense.
Right. It's at the B.F. Hastings building on J and 2nd Street in Old Sacramento. And what's neat about it is they actually have on the wall across the street plaques up about the old Pony Express and the building. There's actually a statue of a rider on a horse right there at the corner of J and 2nd Street in Old Sacramento.
I don't ever remember seeing that.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'll take you there and show it to you next time we go in there. It's actually right across the street from that old bar that we go to in Old Sacramento.
Oh, okay.
The oldest bar in Old Town. It's literally right across the street from that little park area.
Oh, okay.
But that is the only terminus remaining of the Pony Express. Everything else has been destroyed and is gone.
Wow.
And Western Union donated the building to the state of California, I believe back in the 50s. And then they have obviously kept it up and put up the plaque and the big horse with the rider.
Right.
Now, the other thing about the original Pony Express is there is a film in 1997 called The Postman. It was a Kevin Costner movie. I know you haven't seen it, but basically it was about the Pony Express. It is a post-apocalyptic movie. It's supposed to take place in 2013, and the Earth has basically been destroyed. Kevin Costner basically finds an old mail truck, and to try to be able to feed himself, he pretends to be a postman for the new American government, and that the post office has been reestablished.
Okay.
And so they basically reinvent the Pony Express during this movie.
Oh, okay.
It's really a really great movie, and unfortunately it gets bad reviews. It's kind of like the Waterworld type movie for Kevin Costner.
Oh, right.
You know, some people love it, some people hate it. I actually enjoy it. It's a really good movie. It's a little on the long side, but really well worth it. So what we're going to talk about today is the 1947 Pony Express.
All right.
On the 87th birthday of the Pony Express, the Siskiyou County Fair and the Chamber of Commerce came up with this amazing plan to invite the mayors of every city from Yreka down to Sacramento, along with Governor Earl Warren, to the Siskiyou County Fair that was taking place on September 5th, 6th, and 7th of 1947.
Okay.
So basically, this was just a big publicity stunt.
Right.
Now, the interesting thing about this, and this is one of these tangents I'm going to go off of real quick, but I want to bring this up right here in the beginning. A lot of people ask me how I come up with some of my ideas to do podcasts and videos and stuff on. This one came to me. And what I mean by that, this is one of those serendipitous moments in life. And if you haven't heard our serendipitous podcast, go listen to that and you'll know what I'm talking about. Literally 2 weeks before this all started, started, I saw a post on the Reading Buzz Facebook page. The Reading Buzz is kind of like a community page that talks about restaurants and events and things like that. Well, the guy who runs it posted a history moment and talks about how the Pony Express came through Reading. Well, he got a bunch of grief saying, no, that never came through Reading. Pony Express never came this far north. It went into Sacramento. And so I just kind of threw it out of my mind. About a week later, I got a message from a young lady on Find a Grave. And for those of you who don't know, I do Find a Grave memorials, take photographs, and things like that for volunteer, basically, for Find a Grave. And so a young lady reached out to me on a photograph I took of this lady's headstone at the Reading Memorial Cemetery. And she asked me if I had any more information. This may be her grandmother, her great grandmother. This may be her great grandmother that she's been looking for.
Okay.
Her name was Ella Taylor. And so I messaged her, was talking to her, and that was her maiden name, was Ella Taylor. And so I asked her, well, what was her married name? Because it's very unlikely that her maiden name would be on the headstone.
Right.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
Right, yeah.
But it's rare. And so she sent it to me, and I did a bunch of research. Come to find out that this Ella Taylor that I took a picture of was about 50 years after her great-grandmother had passed. So it wasn't her.
Okay.
And for those of you asking, no, I did not find this young lady's great-grandmother. I'm still trying to help her find where she's buried here in Shasta County. But the Ella Taylor that she was referring to, unfortunately, didn't have a headstone. I took a picture of the ground.
Just the dirt, yeah.
The ground where she's buried and the area.
Right.
And this young lady thought that I made the memorial.
Oh, okay.
Which I didn't. I just took the photograph. Well, when I was doing the research for this, come to find out that this Ella Taylor was one of the riders for the 1947 Pony Express ride.
Wow.
And so this whole story that was on the Reading Buzz was true.
It was true, yeah.
And so I reached out to the guy from Reading Buzz, and I told him I was doing this podcast. And so I'm going to send this to him once we're done with it. But I thought that's interesting, and how things happen like that. I see a story a week later. This young lady just reaches out to me from who knows where on Find a Grave.
Right.
Asking about this random grave.
Right.
And come to find out, she was a writer on the Pony Express. Serendipitous moments, I'm telling you. So let's go and get into this Pony Express. 1947, like I said, 87th anniversary of it. It was, like I said, a publicity stunt.
Right.
By the state and Siskiyou County fairs. So a lot of this information I'm going to talk about is going to be kind of repetitive a little bit.
Okay.
I'm going to try not to be as repetitive, but sometimes
you have to be.
It's just going to be. So the Pony Express riders from Yreka to Sacramento carried official invitations to all the city officials along the route and, like I said, Governor Earl Warren to attend the Siskiyou County Fair, which I said took place on September 5th, 6th, and 7th. This Pony Express took place on August 27th, 28th, and 29th.
Okay.
So it was right before the fair in Yreka. So they left Yreka on August 27th and arrived in Sacramento on August 29th at the fairgrounds.
Okay.
In Sacramento, not the Capitol.
Okay.
But the fairgrounds. So when I was researching this, I kind of got a little confused myself, thinking that they were going to the Capitol since they had invitations for Governor Warren.
Right, which would make sense.
Right. So the original intent was to present Governor Warren with the invitation, and the mayor of Yreka, George Wacker, was going to be doing the presenting of the invitation.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's not what happened. That's not how that went down. We'll talk about how that all went down here in a moment, though. There were 88 riders and horses that rode the 280-mile route from Yreka to Sacramento, each riding a 4-mile stretch, except for one county, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Like I said, this whole thing's sponsored by the Yreka Chamber of Commerce. So this was a huge deal.
Yeah.
I mean, to think about putting this all together is incredible. The route followed Highway 99 from Yreka to Sacramento. Obviously, I-5 5 didn't exist at that time. It was
Right.
1947. Highway 99 was the main thoroughfare from Mexico to Canada. So with that being said, there was a state highway patrol escort for the riders, a second truck that carried spare riders and spare horses just in case something happened along the route, along with Raleigh Stevens, who was the Yreka superintendent of the Pony Express. He's the one that put this whole thing together.
Oh, okay.
So he tagged along and followed the riders along with the escort and the extra horses and extra people. All right, so let's start this at the beginning. Now we know what this is and why it exists. Let's get into the details of what happened. And for those of you wondering, I got a lot of this information, if not all this information, from the newspapers at the time. From the Dunsmuir newspapers, Mount Shasta newspapers, Reading newspapers, Tehama County, Placer County, Sacramento, Gridley. All these newspapers were talking about this event. It was a huge event that was happening. So it was on a chilly dawn morning of August 27, 1947 at 4:30 in the morning when Siskiyou County Supervisor Fred Burton took the mail pouch from Frank Russi, Yreka Chamber of Commerce president, in front of the Yreka post office to start the 280-mile ride to Sacramento. There was a number of riders, each riding, like I said, a 4-mile stretch with a 30-minute time limit that had been established for that 4 miles.
Oh, wow. Okay. So they just weren't walking, they were galloping like they used to.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So Dr. A.H. Newton had taken the saddlebags from Fred Burton, so he was the second rider. He in turn passed it along to the next messenger, and between Gazelle and Weed, 2 husband and wife teams were involved.
Huh.
They were Edson and Etzel Folke and John and Stella Cooley. Now remember that name, John Cooley. He's going to come up again here in a little bit.
Okay.
The riders dropped off invitations to the Siskiyou County Fair to the city officials of Weed, Mount Shasta, and Dunsmuir along the way. The riders cut loose and put the miles behind them, arriving in Dunsmuir's north limits in 4 hours and 40 minutes, galloping into Dunsmuir at 9:10 a.m., some 30 minutes ahead of schedule, and then mounted up again a half hour later to head to an overnight stop in Redding, California. Frank Russi, the Chamber of Commerce president of Siskiyou, was the last rider for Siskiyou County.
Okay.
Before handing the package over to the Shasta County Sheriff's Posse.
Okay.
Now, you're going to hear me say the Sheriff's Posse, Possiettes, and a number of riding clubs throughout this podcast, and that's exactly who was involved in taking these invitations. They were riding clubs
Okay.
from Siskiyou County all the way down to Sacramento. So in Shasta County, it was the Shasta County Sheriff's Posse, the Possiettes, which are the women, and then there was a riding company, and we'll get to that here in a second. Just past the Siskiyou Shasta County line, 4 riders robbed the Pony Express.
Okay.
The package was later recovered by the California Highway Patrol after they got involved. The bandits were identified, get this, as T.R. Douglas, Siskiyou County Supervisor, C.M. Seahorn, the mayor of Mount Shasta, Audrey Hardley, president of the Mount Shasta Chamber of Commerce, and Orville Apperson, the son of the newspaper publisher.
Okay.
They chose to rob the Pony Express on the Shasta County side of the county line because they had heard rumors that the Siskiyou County District Attorney Fred Burton was one of the riders.
Oh.
Now that the Pony Express was on the Shasta County side, the Shasta County riders were under the direction of M.P. Howard, the director of the Sheriff's Posse. They took over the package at the Volmer's Ranch on Highway 99 at 1:15 p.m. There were 23 riders who carried the mail pouch from Volmer's Ranch down to Cottonwood,
Oh, okay.
the Tehama County, Shasta County line. They were members of, like I said, the Sheriff's Posse, the Posseiette, and the Riders of the Wonderland.
Okay.
That was the horseman group
All right.
that was involved. Some of the people who participated in this event were June Ballard, and I'm sorry if I am saying some of these names improperly or incorrectly, just going off of what is here. So June Ballard, Wallard Ballard, Helen Panther, and Margaret Graff. Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, who we talked about, but there is a side story on Mr. and Mrs. Taylor that we will get to here in a moment. Sheriff Posse Captain Joe Spear, Bill Wright, Ray Brown, Vernon Smith, George Caton, Nolan Gaughan, Sheriff Bulma. He'll come into play here in a second. Bob Caton, and Otto McValey. Possiettes included Captain Claudia Lee, who we'll talk about here in a second, Margaret Gall, Alpha Brown, Betsy Gilblin, Elma Brown, and Dot Layton. So you notice there's some husband and wife teams, and their last names are the same. There's so many riders here in Shasta County that wanted to ride on this Pony Express experience.
Oh, I'm sure.
That MP Howard, who, like I said, was the guy who took care of all the riders here in Shasta County, had to adjust the route distance.
Okay.
Remember I said they were doing 4 miles?
4 miles, yeah.
He knocked it down to 2 miles.
Okay.
Just to be able to accommodate all the volunteers. So Sheriff Bulma took over. He was the last rider to ride into Redding. He took over at the Redding city limits, but at the bottom of Sulphur Creek Hill, which we all know as Miracle Mile, he was escorted from there into Redding by a color guard, a Redding police car, and the sheriff's posse, possiettes, and riders of the Wonderland, along with junior riders, up to the City Hall of Redding. So the last mile, he was escorted by all those people. He arrived at the Redding City Hall exactly on schedule. Sheriff John Bulma rode up to the City Hall at 5 p.m. with a Pony Express pouch. He was greeted by Mayor Roscoe J. Anderson and Al Baker, representative of the Redding Chamber of Commerce, and other local leaders. That evening, this is what I find really cool. I didn't see this anywhere else along the route, but that evening, the Siskiyou County Riders were guests of the Shasta County Posse and Possiettes and the Redding Chamber of Commerce at a informal gathering at the Lake Redding Park, where they showed horse movies and had refreshments. So a lot of the Siskiyou riders and Shasta County riders got together.
They done had a hoedown.
So the pouch was continued on the next morning at 4:30 a.m. with Captain Claudia Lee of the Shasta County Possiettes. So she started at 4:30 a.m. Once again, she left the Redding City Hall, and she was the first rider. Unfortunately, there was a substitute rider who took over a couple of miles down, and that is where Mrs. Ella Finley Taylor was supposed to take the package.
Okay.
But unfortunately, her and her husband Perry Taylor had to be replaced by the replacement riders and horses that were tagging along. Mrs. Ella Finley Taylor, 44, was to be one of the Pony Express riders, like I said, that morning, August 28th. She was to receive the package and ride it down to her husband Perry, who was waiting for her at the Clear Creek Bridge.
Okay.
And if you don't know where the Clear Creek Bridge is, it's on what we now call 273, right before Wind River Casino.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Perry Taylor was a former member of the Redding Fire Department, and him and Ella had just got married a year before.
Okay.
So they were newlyweds. So sadly, at 4:10 a.m., Ella Taylor fell off of her horse 200 feet from her exchange point with fatal injuries.
Oh, jeez.
Indicating she must have been riding the horse up and down the highway, warming the horse up for the 2-mile ride down to her husband.
Okay.
She was found by passing motorist Tom Wayne and Louis Frank. She was still conscious, laying beside her horse with her head on the pavement in the middle of Highway 99.
Wow.
200 feet south of Oak Grove and 4 miles south of Redding, making her the third rider that morning. She was taken to Memorial Hospital by the McDonald's Chapel ambulance, losing consciousness in and out along the way. She finally passed away at 5:50 a.m.
Wow.
Wow, I just got a little emotional there. I didn't think that was going to happen. California Highway Patrol officers accompanying the riders along with the Shasta County coroner Claude Whiteman investigated the accident. So Whiteman, the coroner, said that it was a skull fracture that apparently was the cause of death for Ella Taylor. He also said it was apparent that her and the horse had fallen along the highway because the horse was skinned up on the right side along with the saddle, and Mrs. Taylor's boots on the right side were all skinned up. So that's where she had fallen on that side. So the horse was a Morgan mare and reportedly gentle and well broken, and Mrs. Taylor was a well-trained rider for many years. So she knew what she was doing.
Yeah, so something must... Now, if you think about it, I mean, while she was trying to warm up the horse, was it still dark? And did the horse, as she was warming it up, fell in the hole, and that's when the horse fell over? I mean, it just...
Well, 4 o'clock in the morning, it's still dark.
Yeah, so somehow it lost its footing, got its foot caught in a hole, something like that.
Well, I was thinking about that, and for me, who I walk a lot, and I walk along the road or the highway a lot of times, and if I'm walking on the pavement alongside the highway, every now and then I will step off the pavement onto the dirt, and there's sometimes a good 2-3 inches between the pavement and the dirt.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if, as she's warming the horse up, she may have made a misstep off the pavement, or from the pavement or from the dirt to the pavement, and didn't lift his foot high enough to hit the pavement and fell that way.
Now, was it a mare or a male?
It was a mare.
So that's a female.
Morgan mare.
Yeah.
So her and her husband Perry had left their home northwest of Oak Grove earlier that morning, and her husband continued on to Clear Creek, where I said he was going to meet her.
Right.
Because he was going to be the next rider. Mm-hmm. Both belonged to the Riders of the Wonderland, that organization I was telling you about earlier. It was a sad event.
Yeah. And I just wonder, it's like, now they have to go and get him and tell him the news.
Exactly. Now, this is where I was telling you we're going to kind of go off onto a side track of the story. Mm-hmm. Mrs. Taylor, and this is what I found very interesting, and anybody who is interested in Shasta County history will find this very interesting as well. Do you know of a old nightclub called Doc's Sky Room?
No.
So Doc's Sky Room was a steakhouse and bar back in the day. It was on Hilltop Drive.
Okay.
On top of Sulphur Creek Hill. So on top of Miracle Mile.
Okay.
Now, Hilltop Drive didn't exist in 1947. There was no Hilltop Drive.
Okay.
So the bar and the restaurant was on Highway 99. And back in 1947, it was the new Highway 99.
Oh, okay.
Well, it was probably at that point 10 years old, but it was still the newer. There was an old Highway 99 at some point. Mm-hmm. So Mrs. Taylor, who was Mrs. Finney Taylor, she resided in Redding for many years. And in May of 1938, as Ella Finney, she bought 0.6 or just over half an acre of property on top of Sulphur Creek Hill. And she built and began operating the Hilltop Club.
Oh, okay.
On July 23rd of 1938 is when she would open the Hilltop Club. It was 1 mile north of Redding on Highway 99, like I said. And where that was located was where the old Highway 99 passed the new Highway 99. Where the old car wash is on the corner.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's where the old highway passed through.
Oh, okay.
That old car wash. And the newer highway is what we call Miracle Mile today.
Okay.
So she owned and operated, she started the Hilltop Club. And like I said, opened it on July 23rd, 1938. And she retained ownership of the Hilltop Club until 1947. Spring of 1947, she just sold it to J.A. Swartz of Oroville. So she just sells her club in the spring of 47.
Right.
She's excited to ride in this Pony Express in August of 47. And unfortunately, falls on the highway with her horse
Right.
and suffers a skull fracture.
I think what's sad is that she doesn't have a headstone.
Right.
And that always makes me sad when I go out with Robert and, we're looking for people. It just, I always try to figure out, I mean, yes, I get it money-wise. The family probably didn't have money, but it makes me sad that these people don't have headstones to where at least their name is there.
Right,
It's
right.
just a patch of dirt. And
Well, and the thing about it is, in the newspaper articles after her passing, they talk about her estate and how Jay Swartz was paying her off for the sale of
oh,
the club.
gotcha.
He didn't pay her in one lump sum.
Oh, okay.
He still owed on the club, so that was part of her estate.
Gotcha.
And so, like I said, the nightclub, I keep calling it a nightclub, but it was a steakhouse
Right.
and club. It was called the Hilltop Club.
Okay.
And like I said, J.A. Swartz bought it from her in 1947. In 1953, Doc Cleary would then buy it. And Doc Cleary would turn it into the Hilltop Club Sky Room.
Okay.
And then he would go on and sell it in 1972. Now, the thing about Doc Cleary, this wasn't his first club. He came from Bernie, and he sold his club called the Rex Club in Bernie
Oh,
and moved down to Reading and bought this
okay.
in 1953. Now, there's some articles saying that I read saying 1951, but the newspapers in 1951 don't have Doc Cleary owning Hilltop Club. It's not until 1953 that he owns the Hilltop Club. So it's a little bit of confusion on that. And the article that I'm referring to was later on in the 1990s that talks about him owning it in 1951. But like I said, going back to the newspapers, it's not until 1953 that I see him taking ownership
Gotcha.
of the
Okay.
Hilltop Club. And for those of you wondering about if the Sky Room still exists, it does not. Unfortunately, it was torn down somewhere around 1995, 1996, somewhere in there. The city of Reading was actually proposing of purchasing the nightclub, but that all kind of fell through. And somebody did purchase it, but they ended up tearing it down and built a new building there now.
Yeah, the office spaces.
Yeah, it's kind of office spaces now. So let's get back to the Pony Express. Like I said, we kind of took a side trip on that, but I thought that was kind of important. That goes back to what I was saying, the find a grave thing.
Right.
And how I found out about all this. So Captain Joe Spear of the Shasta County Sheriff's Posse was the last rider for Shasta County. He rode the last 2-mile stretch into Cottonwood and onto the Tehama County line in Cottonwood and passed the package along to Tehama County at 6:30 a.m. that morning after the horrible passing of Miss Taylor or Mrs. Taylor. So some of the Tehama County riders consisted of Ms. Donna Lee Fowler, Mrs. Hazel Moeller, Doc Hufford, Mrs. Charles Owen, Pearl Owen, Allie Claude, Lee Chambers, and Floyd Davis. You're probably wondering why I give these names out. I do it out of respect. These guys rode, and I think their names should be out there
Oh, exactly.
as riders. So for those of you who don't know, Highway 99 in Red Bluff splits in two. There's East 99 and West 99. So when they were developing this ride, they had a choice to make when they got to Red Bluff, whether to take the east route or the west route. And they chose to go east
Okay.
through Chico. They could have went west and went down what is now I-5
Right.
and gone through Williams, Willows, in that area, but they didn't do that. They went to the east.
Okay.
And so the next stop was going to be Chico. But the Tehama County ride ends at Vina Junction.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. Invitations are presented to the Red Bluff mayor and the Chamber of Commerce. So they ride down to Vina Junction, where they pass along the package to the Butte County riders from the Chico Riding Club, the Butte County Posse, and the Butte County Horsemen's Association. Those were the people involved in the Butte County section of the ride. The 81-mile trip from Redding to Chico took less than 8 hours.
Wow.
With the Pony Express pouch arriving in Chico at 12:30 p.m., an hour and 40 minutes ahead of schedule.
They were really riding.
They were. This is despite the rain falling as early as Anderson, California. That's still in Shasta County, for those of you that don't know. It is just north of Cottonwood and just after the substitute riders for the Taylors. So rain started falling in Anderson through Red Bluff. Despite that, hour and 40 minutes early. Don Mulkey of the Chico Horsemen's Association escorted the Pony Express to the steps of the Chico City Hall, where the invitations were delivered to Mayor Earl R. Bevins and also Don Quinn, the manager of the local Chamber of Commerce. After 15 minutes, the mail pouch was on its way once again, but to Gridley at this point, to the intersection of Wilson Street and Highway 99 in Gridley by the local horsemen in Gridley, California, where Mayor J.R. Schaefer was presented with his invitation, along with Frank Bremer Jr., the vice president of the Gridley Chamber of Commerce, who received his invitation. The pouch was then once again off to the county line at Richville, where the Roseville Riders Club took over. That's not near Roseville, California, so I'm wondering why the Roseville Riders Club took over from there.
Maybe there was no other horseman's club in that area.
Maybe, but they would ride the pouch down to Wheatland. From Wheatland, the Lincoln Riders Club would then take over. They would stop in Yuba City for the night. That would be the second night. And they would rest there until 4:30 the next morning, when they would take off once again. Now, the first rider taking off from Yuba City at 4:30 in the morning was John Cooley.
Oh, okay.
Of Yreka.
Okay.
In Siskiyou County. I told you his name was going to come back.
Yeah.
Once the pouch arrived in Roseville at 8:30 a.m., the Roseville riders once again took over. They would then ride it down to the state fairgrounds in Sacramento. This is where it gets a little fun. Wearing early Western Pony Expressman garb, all dressed up, Lee Perryman, president of the Sacramento Horsemen's Association, was the last rider of the 88 total riders on the 280-mile trip, who took possession of the pouch in northern Sacramento at noon and was escorted on the last stretch, 4-mile stretch, by Riley Stevens, manager of the Pony Express from Yreka, and Walter Bray, a member of the Siskiyou County Riders Association. They arrived at the Sacramento Fairgrounds at 1:20 August 29th, some 20 minutes behind schedule. So it took them an hour and 20 minutes to go 4 miles. So you know that Lee Perryman, Riley Stevens, and Walter Bray were taking in that moment.
Yeah.
For the last 4-mile stretch.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the streets were packed.
Oh, I bet.
In Sacramento.
I mean, who would not want to have had witnessed that?
Oh, yeah. No, exactly. So it took them an hour and 20 minutes. And I think that was probably well worth that 20-minute delay.
I kind of doubt that they were galloping.
Yeah. I doubt it,
Trotting,
too.
maybe, but galloping, I don't think so.
Once they arrived at the state fairgrounds in Sacramento, they were greeted by the Siskiyou County Sheriff's possemen. They were also greeted by Sacramento Mayor George Klump and Arthur S. Dudley, Secretary Manager of the Sacramento Chamber of Commerce. Now, what name were they not greeted by that was supposed to be there? Governor Earl Warren.
Oh.
Or anybody representing the state of California.
Really?
Really.
That's weird.
So Mr. Stevens, Riley Stevens, put this whole thing together. 88 riders rode 280 miles. This was all planned out, and the governor couldn't even show up.
Wow.
or send a representative from his office
Exactly.
to show up to accept this invitation from the Siskiyou County Fairgrounds and the Chamber of Commerce.
Wow. That's so disappointing.
Okay, I get it. Maybe the governor had other things planned and couldn't make it, but at least send a representative from your office.
Send a representative, to accept
Right.
the invitation. That's quite a slap in the face.
And this isn't something that was a last minute deal. They scheduled this whole thing. This thing took months and months to put together.
Right.
And so the governor knew about it
Wow.
months in advance.
That's disheartening. It's just
So I think that was one of the biggest things that kind of disappointed me about this whole story is the young lady lost her life. Mm-hmm. All these people put in the time and effort to get these invitations down to Sacramento for the pure purpose of inviting the governor of California and to promote the state and Siskiyou County fairs.
right.
And the governor can't show up or send a representative in his on his behalf.
So disappointing. Jeez.
So that was the story of the 1947 Pony Express.
Wow.
Now, what I find interesting is Siskiyou County, Shasta County, Tehama County, even Butte County, there's a lot written about their involvement. I gave you names from Siskiyou County, Shasta County, and Tehama County. Mm-hmm. There were no names printed for Placer County or Sacramento, who the writers really were, except for the main guys I talked about.
Right. Guess the newspaper just didn't think it was that big of a deal.
Maybe. But for us living here in Shasta County, I thought that was pretty cool that the sheriff's posse, the posseettes, the young riders, and the riders of the Wonderland, there were so many people that they had to adjust the mileage from 4 to 2.
Right.
So many volunteers that wanted to ride.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
So for those of you who say that there was no Pony Express ride that came through Shasta County, there it is.
Yep.
It may be a publicity stunt, and it may be 87 years after the real Pony Express, but it still counts.
It still counts. It doesn't matter.
They delivered invitations from Weed down to Sacramento.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Right. And what I didn't mention, there was also, besides the invitation, there was a ring in the package as well. There was a ring that was made up just for Governor Warren to be presented to him.
Wow.
As well. So there's nothing written in any of the articles that I saw talking about him not showing up or anything. I just read to you what was in the articles that I read. The mayor and the vice president representative of the Sacramento Chamber of Commerce were there. If Governor Warren was there, they would have mentioned it.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And they didn't. So
exactly.
All the articles I read said that he was greeted by the mayor and the secretary manager of the Chamber of Commerce.
Wow.
So that's it for this episode of Digging Deeper, brought to you by California Unearthed. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Hopefully, Cheryl, you enjoyed that as well.
Oh, I did. That was very interesting. Had no idea that it even happened.
Yeah, exactly. Me either. All right, guys. Well, that's it. We will see you on the next episode. I think we're going to talk about a highway haunting on our next podcast.
Sounds interesting.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of a heads up on that one. And I say that because Cheryl actually brought this one to me. So I can't really hide this one from her when she brought it to me. So we're going to talk about some ghosts on the highway. And you guys are just going to have to wait and see which highway that is. It is one that I have been over many, many, many times. I personally haven't seen any ghosts, but there are plenty of stories out there for those who have. All right, guys. See you on the next episode.